For those of us who don't experience racism on a daily or otherwise regular basis, one of the biggest barriers to understanding systemic racism is understanding that it reaches far beyond the places that we would, for lack of a better term, expect to see it. For those of us who have been working on our allyship in recent months and years, it's easy enough to spot systemic racism in politics, or in education, or in the arts, but chances are we're missing part of the bigger picture. For that reason, I spoke with a friend and colleague, Leandra Mayfield, about her experiences in music academia and in her current field of music therapy.
Hi there, my name is Leandra Mayfield. I am a board-certified music therapist and yoga instructor. I currently work in children's psychiatric, but I have a small startup private practice called Growth Aesthetics Wellness. My ultimate goal is to have a wellness center that collaborates with a variety of expressive therapies to provide services to those in need that can't afford them. You can find me on Instagram at Growth Aesthetics Wellness, and you can also check out my website, growthaestheticswellness.com. Thanks.
In both of my undergrads, I went to predominantly white institutions, which I think most people do when they pursue music because of, various reasons: notoriety, scholarship availability, accessibility. Sometimes it's easier than going to like a historically Black university. It definitely was for me. I would have just loved to hear more Black composers and just be exposed to more Black music, have more Black music performed in concerts that wasn't like Afro-Caribbean ensemble. There's so many Black composers that were involved in classical music that we never discuss and we don't even know that existed. Because I feel like, at this point we have Black music classes, which is great. That's, I'm glad that that exists, but it's music. And, it should be inclusive, and it should be something that everyone has to talk about.
The fact of the matter is, we meet many of our future colleagues in college, and our practices in college tend to turn into our practices in our vocations. The reason why I spoke so much about collegial circles in my first video is because it's one of the fundamental aspects of understanding and changing systems of prejudice, because human practices tend to benefit from having a broader and more diverse array of perspectives.
Something that you said really stuck out to me, and it was when you were talking about, how many people, when you're looking for subs, are people of color, reaching out to different people to cover your classes or church jobs and stuff. How many people are non-binary? How many people are, just of a different ethnicity, period. And I really found that in music school, people are very cliquey, and, you tend to feel very excluded. I don't feel like I was generally afforded the opportunities that a lot of my friends were, just because I wasn't in their clique. And I didn't have the interests that they had, but we're at the same school, we're taking the same classes, we have very similar abilities. And so I never had a church job. I just didn't get the opportunity to do that. And I think about when people did call subs, no one ever called me. That was never a thing. I also think about in my graduate school experience, we had no Black faculty. Our faculty was very small. I was the only Black person in my cohort, and in the cohort before me, and in the cohort after me. So, it's really interesting how working with people so intimately that don't look like you really shapes your perspective of yourself and changes how you kind of feel like you need to function. I'm a very animated person. I talk with my hands. You can see me talking with my hands right now. For a lot of people in my practicum experience, that was very off-putting. That was wow, you're being really aggressive right now. So having those experiences too, it's wow, am I this angry Black person? Am I giving off this weird energy where people don't want to work with me, or people are uncomfortable asking me to, sub for them, or what am I doing that's making myself be perceived in this way where I don't seem like capable or comparable to my peers. I'm gonna go off a little bit, but like this colorblind like nonsense, I cannot handle it. I literally fight every troll on the internet that I see saying it, because I'm a Black woman. That is my identity. That's who I am. If you cannot see that and accept it and recognize it and understand what goes along with that, then you don't see me and you don't understand me. And that's so huge. Like, I think it's just so crazy because you're erasing somebody's identity by saying, I don't see color. Yes, you fucking do. You see it, you're choosing to ignore it because it makes you uncomfortable. And I have to be uncomfortable all the time. I have to be in super white spaces and have people talking about racist shit. And, you know, like, I have to exist in those moments all the time. You can be uncomfortable and just recognize who I am and like live with that. Sorry, I can't go away. I can't ghost for a second while I'm in your presence. You have to deal with all my blackness.
Considering what Leandra just talked about, I hope that most white people in music circles would find this disheartening, but not surprising. I hope that in a field concerned primarily with personal and cultural expression, we'd recognize the importance of equitable representation and also recognize that we've fallen short of that ideal. In medical care, however, the science doesn't lie attitude tends to blind us to the disparities that we might see in patient care. The racism in these cases can be obvious, like doctors explicitly letting stereotypes affect their treatment plans. Or they can be more complicated, where economic and social disparities create community or population-specific problems that healthcare providers aren't equipped to solve. Music therapy, as part of both music academia and healthcare, is affected by systemic racism in a multitude of ways. Many of these issues can be lessened, if not resolved, by creating a workforce with the experience necessary to deal with these problems, but such a breaking of norms is often met with hesitation, if not outright hostility.
I interned with, again, all white people, and like the things that, you know, I wanted to bring to the table were really technology based. Like I was really interested in like getting an iPad and using like that type of technology, and like they were just like, what are you doing? You need to learn this folk music, you need to learn these hymns, you need to like, here, you know, you want this like church book, like take that to take that to your next session. And I'm just like, okay, that's cool, but like what about new stuff? You know, like I felt like very unheard, whereas I was interning simultaneously with someone else that, you know, was white, and it seemed like all of her ideas were awesome and like all of my ideas kind of sucked. And obviously, you know, that is a matter of perception to an extent, but it was very apparent that I wasn't liked, and I didn't know why, and there was really no reason, you know? So those are the kind of things that like I experienced all throughout my higher education that was just like, wow, this is so weird. You don't really have anybody to talk to it about either, you know? Like you have your peers and you can kind of bitch about it, but like when you go to an institution that has no Black faculty in the music department, you know, when you may not have anyone in the cohort above you to discuss these things, it's just like,
Early music therapy research, being conducted primarily by white practitioners with primarily white patients, tends to support the use of hymns or folk tunes. But music therapy, being primarily a mental health profession, benefits greatly from the cognitive benefits of memory. And so cultural competency, or the understanding of your patient's musical background and musical culture, is of critical importance in music therapy practice.
In my current field, it's real white. I love what I do. I think I have the best job in the entire world, bar none. But it's really interesting when, again, you bring different things to the table. I work with a wide variety of people. they're actually mostly minorities. And they're teens, for the most part, teens and adolescents, and their musical interests are, you know, SoundCloud rappers, you know, they like trap, they like sad boy music, like that's their genre. That's what I know, I love it. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic, but it is not anything that you would hear on the radio. And that's really hard for people to understand. But it's really important for people to have their music. And I think that client preferred music is like the most important thing in the world. You know, if I come to you and I'm like, hey, Adam, you know, come listen to this John Denver with me real quick. That might not be your vibe. And if it's not, then we're not going to have a very effective session, you know? So that's something that's been really hard for my organization to understand, and getting past like the censorship weirdness of it.
When practitioners don't recognize the value of a genre with which they're not familiar, it can be detrimental to their clients who might have a personal connection to that genre. In music education and in the broader concert music world, classical music tends to be propped up as a music that is more objectively valuable or of higher quality, or of more appropriate or universal appeal. And with that valuation comes the devaluation of other genres. In at least American music spaces, that's often to the detriment of rap and hip-hop, often citing its use of language.
I think there's a lot of emphasis put on language in music and not enough on semantics. Like, what are you actually saying beyond the expletives? You know, what are you actually saying? What's the emotion that you're trying to portray? And that's what the kids identify with. That's what they get. They're like, yeah, this is how I feel. And I've always felt like they should have that. So that's been one of my biggest obstacles as far as like working within my organization. And then now with everything going on, I've really been advocating heavily for cultural competency training. And I feel like it's something we don't have. It's something that I want for everyone. It's something that I want for myself. You know, like, how do we navigate this time as mental health professionals? You know, like, it hasn't happened yet, but I'm just waiting for the day where we get a kid that's been deeply affected by this. Like, yeah, my dad got arrested in the protests or something. And it's like, how do we process that with them in like a really healthy way that is not tone deaf, but still showing professionalism. So it's really, like, a really thin line to toe. You never want to veer off that neutrality, but at the same time, like, I don't feel like anything that's happening right now is political whatsoever. It's an issue of humanity. And yeah, it's something that I really want for everyone to have. So I've been advocating super hard and doing like all this research in my spare time and trying to get that brought into our organization because I feel like we really need it.
One of the biggest things the music industry can do in order to help the music therapy profession is to fund their research, and specifically to fund the research of practitioners from a variety of different backgrounds and with a variety of different research interests. Relatively speaking, it is a new and growing field with some great practitioners, but the longer the profession is having to work without a solid base of research, the longer it will take before they're able to reach the needs of their clients. With that in mind, Leandra took a moment to share with me what more effective music therapy research and education might look like.
I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about research design and research methods in music therapy. There's a lot of things that I most commonly see. However, that's not the spectrum of everything that's out there. This is just my limited perspective as a former student and now a professional. So I want to say that I most commonly see qualitative methods as a whole. When I do see quantitative, I often see surveys, and I think that's because it's the most accessible means, and I think it's also the most efficient and effective way of getting a large sample size. I think that funding is typically a challenge in our field, especially at institutions, because our programs are often held in music programs versus a psychology program or a neuroscience program. And I think that creates lots of challenges with funding and how the funding is allocated. And I think that there's sometimes some gatekeeping involved, although we are the experts in our field. I think that our field still isn't as well known as others. And I think oftentimes it's difficult to get funding due to that. People don't truly understand music therapy and they don't necessarily know our training. I also think that the way that our programs are designed, it's often confusing for people because we have bachelor's level entry into the field versus many other helping professions do master's level entry, and we also don't have state licensure. And so I think that with those things being misaligned, it provides a misconception for the knowledge and quality of services that we are able to provide as professionals. And I think that extends to research to some extent too. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about that and kind of explain what I most commonly see.
If you're interested in learning more about the music therapy profession and the ways in which we can make it more equitable, I've left some links in the description to further readings, as well as ways that you can help the music therapy profession right now. I'd like to thank you so much for watching this video, and I would like to thank Leandra so much for her help in creating it. Have a good day.